Today, I'm going to share with you the story of how a freight broker went from doing over $1 million a year in sales to zero overnight and almost throwing himself into bankruptcy. But most importantly, I'm going to share with you 3 very, very important lessons that you can learn from this to avoid this happening to you. All right, whether you're a startup or whether you're an experienced broker, this applies to either. You need to understand this. Okay, so here's how the story goes. I'm going to leave his name out of the equation for this story, just for anonymity purposes, because it really doesn't matter. But when I was running my brokerage, LDI, when I was the CEO and owner and running that brokerage, I had a freight broker agent. It was an agent. So he does the same job as a freight broker, but he was an agent working under us. We had about 80 offices throughout the United States, and he was one of them. And he had been working with a very large shipper for several years, and he was doing really, really well. He only had one shipper. He was doing over $1 million a year with really healthy margins of 20% plus margins. Had a great relationship with them, did a lot of business with them, and made a lot of money. He was making, as an agent at that time, he was making between $15,000 and maybe $25,000 or $30,000 a month in commissions, working from home with very little overhead.
Nice.
Okay. So he had a highly profitable freight broker agency working under my business. And so I remember when he first came on and I saw he had this one big shipper, I had a conversation with him about the need to diversify his customer base. And I said to him, I said, listen, what would happen to you? What would happen to your family? What would happen to your lifestyle if you lost that one big shipper? And he agreed and said he'd promised to try to do some prospecting and pick up a new shipper, but he was so busy covering loads and servicing his customer that he didn't have time. And so he was very frustrated because he didn't have that time. But this went on for a long time, well over a year. We had numerous conversations about the need to prospect, get new customers, and de-risk his business, because the fact is, having one big customer is a huge risk. You'd much rather have 10 customers doing $100,000 each for $1 million in sales than to have one customer doing $1 million, correct? All right. So I explained that to him. And unfortunately, while he listened, he didn't take action. He wasn't able to take action. And the next thing you knew, he called me up out of the blue and I could tell something was wrong. He was in a panic. He let me know and told me that he had lost the shipper and he was not going to be getting any other freight, and he didn't think he was going to be able to get the shipper back. So he literally went from making $15,000 to $20,000, $30,000 a month in commissions as a freight agent, doing over 7 figures a year in sales, to zero. Now you have to understand something. He had built his entire lifestyle around that income. So his home and his spending habits and everything, and he should have been able to save a bunch of money along the way. But unfortunately, like a lot of people, when you make more, you spend more. And so ultimately, his savings ran out very quickly. And the next thing I knew, he was asking me for a loan. He was asking me for money to try to float him until he could get that shipper back or recover the cash flow that he had lost. In trying to be a good partner, because I was the broker and he was the agent and a friend, we started loaning him some money to try to float him along. It wasn't a lot of money, but it helped him during that difficult time. Fortunately, within a few months, he was able to land another big shipper, start generating some positive cash flow. And it was another really good customer. You know, I remember having that conversation with him and telling him, listen, you need to de-risk your business. You need to get another shipper. Don't fall back into that trap that you fell into the first time of having one big shipper. And fortunately, he eventually went on to get other shippers and eventually went on to get that first big customer back that he had lost. So this is kind of the rise, the fall, and the rise again of a freight broker agent that I know personally. And the last I heard from him several years ago, he had just had his first month where he had made over $100,000 in commission in 1 month. Okay. So in 1 month, he had taken what he had leveraged with having one customer and parlayed that into a bunch of customers. And he had generated over $100,000 in commissions, not in gross profit, but in commissions as an agent that he had been paid in 1 month. And so he called me to thank me. I had already sold the company by then, but he had called me to thank me. And I really appreciated that. And, I appreciate him for all he did for our business, for his business, and for the fact that he actually learned from some of his mistakes. And so I wanted to share with you guys some of the lessons that you can take away from this. And these are very important lessons. And usually these are very expensive lessons, okay? Meaning you have to experience these things in order to learn these lessons, but you can learn in advance. So I'm going to share with you 3 things, okay? Number 1 lesson I want you to take from this is never, ever rely on 1 or 2 big customers for your lifestyle, for your business. You have to diversify your customer base. As I said to you before, if you're going to be doing $1 million in sales, it's better to have 10 clients averaging $100,000 a piece to do $1 million in sales than it is to have 1 or 2 big clients doing $1 million in sales. Because if you lose that 1 client, the ship can sink. But if you got 10 clients, it's kind of a bump in the road. It hurts a little bit, but you can de-risk your business by diversifying the number of customers you have. And you would be absolutely shocked how many freight brokers and how many freight broker agents where 50 to 90% of their revenue is controlled by 2 or 3 shippers. And it's a huge risk. So you have to continue prospecting, okay? All right, number 2, when you don't have time to prospect and to sell and to go out and get new clients, because you're so busy covering loads for your existing clients, it's time to hire. Yes, it's time to hire somebody to do some of the operational responsibilities like posting loads, negotiating with carriers, dispatching carriers, following up on bills of lading, all the things that an operations person is going to do, right? So that you can buy your time back to continue prospecting, to continue selling. This is a really important lesson. You can never, ever stop selling as a business owner, because here's the facts. I don't care what business you're in. There's always going to be some customer turnover. You're going to have new customers coming in and other customers going out. Hopefully you have more customers coming in than you're losing, and you have more revenue coming in than you're losing, and that will show growth. But the only way that happens when you get really busy and you don't have time to prospect, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard this from people, heard this from agents and from brokers. I just don't have time. I just don't have time. I'm so busy. You need to find time. And the only way you can find time is to hire somebody, train somebody to take over that responsibility so you can buy back your time. So this is where you have to take some of those profits and reinvest it into your business. Okay? That's lesson number 2. Number 3, never, ever give up. You are going to run into difficulties. You are going to run into challenges. Sometimes you're going to think that the sky is falling and there is no way to recover. But the fact is, you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, dig your heels in, and move forward. And that's what this gentleman did. So, I've got really good things to say about him, because ultimately at the end of the day, a lot of people would have folded up their chair and just folded up their table and folded up shop and just quit. But he didn't quit. He dug his heels in and he fought for what he knew he could do and what he deserved. And ultimately, he went on to build a very successful freight broker agency. I told you the last time I heard from him several years ago, he did over 6 figures, over $100,000 in commissions in 1 month. Okay. So those are the 3 lessons I wanted to share with you. Listen, if you're curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, and you're just getting started and you need some help and you need to connect the dots, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. We've trained over 10,000 students, been in business training people over a decade. I've personally done over $200 million as a freight brokerage. And we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money back guarantee. So check that out. Make sure you like, comment, and share the video. And we'll see you next week on another Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.